We're back live in studio with Samuel Zurzer in the business headquarters of Radio Shalom 1650 AM in Montreal, Canada, with the Money and Business Show. Samuel Zurzer is a consultant with TE Mirador, which has been providing individuals, families, businesses, and employees with truly objective financial advice and education since 1972. You can visit them at www.temirador.com. You have questions about your personal finances? You need advice in making sound financial decisions? Samuel and his guests are ready to take your call at 514-738-4100 extension 200. And now, back to the Money and Business Show.
Maurice Cousin from National Bank Financial, and we're back with our guests today, Marcy Ages and Debbie Gilbert. Marcy is a senior consultant and certified professional consultant on aging for TE Wealth and has acquired industry accreditation in investment management and financial planning. Debbie Gilbert is a certified professional consultant on aging in private practice and the founder of Generations based in Toronto. She works with individuals and families across Canada facing their own journeys. And our topic for today is Alzheimer's. Can it wreak havoc on your family finances? Go ahead, Sam.
Yes, and also we interviewed one of the top scientists in the world. His name is Claudio Coelho, is currently the holder of the Charles E. Frostmerk Endowed Chair in Pharmacology of the Department of Pharmacology and Therapeutics at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. We'll just listen. It's about 15 minutes long, so go ahead.
Thank you, Sam, for the opportunity to ask Dr. Coelho a few questions. It is a privilege and very exciting to have one of the top neuroscientists in the world as a guest on the Money and Business Show today. His accomplishments and international recognition are extensive. Dr. Claudio Coelho graduated from medicine at Buenos Aires University. He is currently the Charles E. Frost Merck Chair in Pharmacology at McGill University. He leads a research team working on the multidisciplinary aspects of brain repair, brain aging, and cellular and molecular neuropathology of Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Coelho is currently an associate member of the Departments of Anatomy and Cell Biology and Neurology and Neurosurgery at McGill University, adjunct professor at the Scripps Institute in La Jolla, California, and visiting professor at Oxford University. He has been elected Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada. Hello, Dr. Coelho. Welcome to the Money and Business Show. How are you?
Very well. Thank you for this invitation, Debbie.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today on a topic that you are passionate about and have dedicated your career to. I understand that you were recently in Europe speaking on Alzheimer's disease. Are you finding that it is as big an issue there as it is here in Canada?
Oh, certainly. The awareness of the pending epidemics of Alzheimer's disease and dementia in general is becoming well noted in Europe and in the Orient as well. This is something that we will have to confront seriously in the coming years.
Dr. Coelho, you write that the financial impact of neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's disease is already larger than that of cancer and diabetes combined. It will be simply monumental in years to come given the aging of our population. You have both encouraging and disappointing information. I want to start with the disappointing part so that you can help us to shift our expectations to be more in line with current scientific research. You wrote that we should not expect to have a drug that can cure or reverse Alzheimer's disease in the near future. By the time a person is diagnosed with either mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's disease, there is too much damage to the brain for drugs to have a long-lasting beneficial effect. As this disease can be silent for decades, you and other scientists are focusing on finding what are called biomarkers that can accurately predict if a person will in fact develop Alzheimer's disease in the future. Dr. Coelho, if you find these biomarkers, what would this mean for a person in the silent stages of this disease who today looks totally normal and healthy?
Well, it means that eventually they will have the possibility of assessing that the pathological process of Alzheimer is ongoing and to which degree, and give the ethical opportunity to treat these patients with novel drugs or with already developed drugs. And this will be an extraordinary opportunity because we will be able to bring forward the point of entry in treatment at the moment that the pathology is likely to be reversible, or at least it can be arrested to the point of damage. And so, in short, if we can delay even for 5 years the onset of the disease, the incidence of Alzheimer's will be reduced by half. That means billions and billions of dollars, not to count personal suffering and the strength for society in general.
Dr. Coelho, thank you. You touched on a topic that any of us could unknowingly be in the silent stages of the disease. Is there anything we can do to remain in this silent stage for as long as possible while scientists such as yourself are working to find biomarkers and treatment?
The answer is yes, and the principles are very simple and sound. It is very clear that, for instance, lifestyles makes a tremendous difference on the status of the brain. To keep the brain active, starting with, is very important. It's a clear indication that the level of education and intellectual activity diminish the incidence of the disease. Blood pressure is one element. Aging is a major risk factor, and there's little we can do about aging, but we can have healthy aging, but taking care of our diet, the classical healthy diet of with antioxidants, fish, and etc. And also exercise. Exercise has a tremendous positive impact in the brain because helps to secrete a number of factors that maintains the connections in the brain intact. So this is one simple recipe, if you were, to whatever is good for the heart is possibly good for the brain, and this will delay the disease. However, there will be situations, and I think you're interested in that as well, which will be more of genetic nature, which we can discuss.
Well, that leads me into my next question, and I'm sure this is on a lot of people's minds. If my parent or sibling has Alzheimer's disease, does this mean that I will likely get it as well?
The answer is no, not necessarily. And there are cases of monozygotic twins in which one of the twins contract Alzheimer while the other does not. And in that case, this is a very clear case and dramatic as well, that the lifestyle has a tremendous impact. However, there can be the case as well if there is a genetic charge. And this brings me to the point that not necessarily everybody is aware that there are two fundamental forms of the disease. One is totally genetic, and this is called the familial form, familial Alzheimer's disease, and the other is the sporadic. The familial occurs very promptly, as early as 30, 40 years of age, and is devastating, very rapid evolution, and is caused by mutations, by changes in genes, which are responsible for the metabolism of a particular protein, which is central to the toxicity in the brain, the production of the so-called A-beta amyloid protein or peptide. And the sporadic form is the one that is the majority, is over 90% of the cases, that usually appears from 65 onwards, although around 60, 1 in 10 people probably has Alzheimer's, and 1 in 4, 80 onwards, has Alzheimer's in North America. And those cases are driven not only by the environmental factor, but also by the composition of our genes. And we don't know all the genes which contribute to accelerate or favor the onset of Alzheimer, except for one, which is the quality of the genes you have on that particular protein, which is called ApoE. And there are 3 versions, 2, 3, and 4, and depends which combinations you have for being more vulnerable to develop Alzheimer's disease. Not necessarily you will have it, but the combination of APO4 is, a point in case, makes likely to more likely to contract in old age Alzheimer's.
Well, I think that what you're speaking about really highlights the importance of doing research. And before I ask my last question, I have a second last question on help us understand the importance of the research that you're doing. Most of us aren't in laboratories and don't understand the full scope of the importance of what research in Alzheimer's disease that you and your colleagues around the world are doing. And if you could just speak on that moment, on that point, that would be great.
My great pleasure. The big point for a program like this is that it makes economic sense to be very aggressive on supporting Alzheimer's research. The cost presently is absolutely enormous of the disease and can only be resolved and faster if there is an aggressive investment on research in Alzheimer's. Presently, Alzheimer's research is 1/20th of the cancer research investment in a situation in which there is a real social drama and becoming even more serious. We have good news, and the good news is that collectively all of us, all the scientists who are working, are developing extraordinary interesting new models to study disease in animals, in cells, working with human material. We are getting closer to define unequivocal biomarkers that can monitor the progression of the disease or the effectiveness of drugs. We are identifying potential new targets and new opportunities to delay or to arrest the disease. But this is a very costly activity, and only can be done if there is a concerted effort, public or governmental, to bring the level of funding of Alzheimer's research to what it has been historical, that of cancer and other social challenges.
Well, I'd like to ask you to help us end then on a message of hope. Many baby boomers and older seniors around the world are listening to this show. And what message of hope would you give us then in terms of Alzheimer's disease?
The message of hope is that there are thousands of people like my research group. In Canada, there are a good 200 scientists working, and thousands in America, and other equal number, a larger number in Europe probably, being passionate about trying to resolve the mysteries of the disease and the apparent contradictions. But at the same time, we know we have a phenomenal database at molecular level, which permits us to experiment and test hypotheses, find new biomarkers in animal models and validate those and eventually bring this to the human situation, to the clinic. So with all of us very passionate to finding the clues that will permit the translation from basic research to the clinic. But that cannot occur unless there is investment to take the most out of this tremendous machinery.
Well, thank you, Dr. Coelho, for all of the information and really current scientific research that you are involved in. It was a pleasure speaking with you today, and I wish you and your colleagues much success. We are all counting on you.
Thank you, David, for your good wishes, and it's very encouraging for us to hear that people like you and the public endorses our work and our passion to resolve this tremendous challenge.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was Debbie Gilbert from her company Generations in Toronto, interviewing one of the top scientists and researchers and authority on Alzheimer's disease. That was Claudio Coelho, chair of the pharmacology of the Department of Pharmacology Therapeutics at McGill University. Again, my name is Samuel Zerzer for the Money Business Show, Radio Shalom, CJRS 1650 AM in Montreal. We'll be right back in 2 minutes.
We're back live in studio with Samuel Zerzer in the business headquarters of Radio Shalom 1650 AM in Montreal, Canada, with the Money and Business Show. Samuel Zerzer is a consultant with TE Mirador, which has been providing individuals, families, businesses, and employees with truly objective financial advice and education since 1972. You can visit them at www.temirador.com. You have questions about your personal finances? You need advice in making sound financial decisions? Samuel and his guests are ready to take your call at 514-738-4100, extension 200. And now, back to the Money and Business Show.
Maurice Kuzno from National Bank Financial. We're into the clubhouse turn and headed down the home stretch for our show. And let me run some closing quotes for you today. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down 160.83 to 12,419.86. The S&P 500 down 19.10 to 1313.22. TSX was down 176.08 to 11,433.22. Gold is up 570 to 1564.40. Oil is down $3.16 to 87.59, and the Canadian dollar is down 0.0061 to 97.13. And now we're going to conclude our show today with our special guests, Marcy Ages and Debbie Gilbert. Marcy is a senior consultant and a certified professional consultant on aging at TE Wealth and has acquired industry accreditation in investment management and financial planning. And Debbie is a certified professional consultant on aging in private practice and the founder of Generations based in Toronto. She works with individuals and families across Canada facing their own care journeys. Our topic today is Alzheimer's. Can it wreak havoc on your family's finances? And it was very interesting, Sam, to hear the doctor mention before that there's more people dying from this than cancer and diabetes combined. And
that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and often we don't hear about it, but like we mentioned beginning of the show today, if those people out there who missed it, a lot of famous people, Charlton Heston, Ronald Reagan, Charles Bronson, Peter Falk, Perry Como, Arlene Francis, Rita Hayworth, Sugar Ray Robinson, Jack Lord, Perry Como, James Doohan,
a very common disease. A very common disease.
And those are just the famous people. Norman Rockwell,
yes,
too.
Yes, and I will get back to Debbie soon because I want to ask her a few more questions on that interview. It was an awesome interview, by the way. But I want to get back to Marcy. Marcy, we're talking a lot more, when people have Alzheimer's and they get to a stage where they need the power of attorney, the power of attorney comes in. In the event of a person being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, how important is it to have a power of attorney?
Sam, it's extremely important for people to have a power of attorney. And most people think if they just have a will, that's good enough. That will take care of them if somebody needs to take care of them, actually. But it's actually, the will is for after you die. It deals with your estate only after you die. You need to have, as soon as possible, if you don't have it right now, both powers of attorney for property and powers of attorney for health care. You need them because
you made a distinguish between both of them. How important is it?
both types are important. One is for your finances, and one is for your healthcare decisions. So I would say they're equally important.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yes. So once you have these, if your family member does get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, then you're going to have somebody who can act on your behalf. If you don't, it makes things a lot more complicated. And it's important not to wait until the person already is diagnosed with the disease or showing signs of the disease, because by then it may be too late for a person to actually fill out a power of attorney if they're not considered mentally capable. So that's very important to do it as soon as you can. Also, you want to keep in mind that some financial institutions will actually only accept their powers of attorney for property. So if you come in with one that your lawyer did for you, they might not accept it for your bank accounts, for example. So it's best to check with your financial institution what they'd like to have, and then you might have to go in and sign their document, and then at least you'll know that no matter what, everything will be fine with your financial institution. If you do go out and get one done by a lawyer, which is just as good, you want to keep in mind that it's possible, if your power of attorney is old, that the financial institution might still ask for proof that you are not mentally incapacitated when the document was written. And that can be extremely difficult if it was a long time ago, if the lawyer who did the paperwork is perhaps not alive anymore, or the witnesses aren't. It can be very difficult. So it's always a good idea to update your paperwork in this area, perhaps once every 5-7 years.
By the way, Marcy, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they find you?
Well, they can look on our website, www.tewealth.com, and they can find my name on there, or they can just Google me, Marcy Aegis.
Good, thank you. I also want to thank Debbie. That was a great interview, by the way. But what left me, I know we have a few minutes left. I want to ask you maybe one more other question, if time is permitting, is that what I think from his message is that there's just not enough investment, Dr. Coelho's. People are investing more into the cancer research, but not enough into Alzheimer's. Is this what I'm getting at?
He's saying, yes, absolutely, that Alzheimer's disease receives 1/20th of the funding that the cancer research receives, which isn't to say don't support cancer research. I think one of the pieces is that Alzheimer's disease is, in general, an older person's disease. It's not a sexy disease. And is there a bit of ageism happening here where we're thinking, well, they're older, so do we really want to invest in money? But for the boomers, for people who are in their 40s or 50s or 60s, who may be in the silent stages of this disease, you bet we don't want to develop Alzheimer's disease. We want it stopped. And I think that's his point.
Quick point here, Sam. I have a client who's 63 years old, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I know somebody who told me one of their friends is 53 and diagnosed with that also. So,
wow. We have about 1 minute left, Debbie. The disease is heartbreaking. We know that. What additional perspectives can you offer to help families or people living with this disease how to cope?
Well, this disease is heartbreaking, Sam. There are so many losses for the person living with the disease and their family. It's important to approach these challenging care years with compassion and to help ensure that the person living with Alzheimer's disease has his or her voice heard. Although cognitive function declines, there are other aspects of a person, call it their core being, their soul or essence, that needs to be acknowledged and listened to. And although their abilities to participate in daily activities significantly decline over time, where they are able to make decisions or voice opinions, whether on care options, clothes they wish to wear, or food they wish to eat, they have the right to do so and be listened to. I challenge the notion that we experience role reversals and that with Alzheimer's disease, our parents become our children. I believe that we experience evolving roles. As multiple adult generations, we need to stretch beyond our comfort zone and learn how to be in relationship with a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other dementias and become dependent on us for care, whether we are their spouses, adult sons and daughters, or adult grandchildren. We need to develop our own compassion and help ensure that a vulnerable person's dignity is kept intact and that they receive the respect and care they need and have a right to have. Caregivers and the person living with Alzheimer's disease all need tremendous practical, emotional, and spiritual support on a very, very difficult care journey.
How to get a hold of you, Debbie? You have 10 seconds left.
416-635-7555 or Google me at Debbie@generationscan.com.
Debbie, thank you very much for a great show and also a great interview, by the way. That was a great interview.
You. That was a great honor.
Yes, you are made for radio. Also, Marcy Aegis, thank you very much for being on our show. And
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and you'll come on again. And also, I want to thank Morris Cousineau from National Bank Financial, another great show.
Thanks, Sam. It was a very informative show, and I think our listeners out there picked up a lot of information.
And this
today.
will be replayed on Monday night. Again, my name is...
3 great guests today.
Yes, 3 great guests. My name is Samuel Zerza for the Money and Business Show on Radio Shalom, CJRS 1650 AM Montreal. Happy capitalism, and God bless you. Opinions stated by various contributors to the Money and Business Show and related programs are not to be considered as endorsed by Radio Shalom, its employees, TE Wealth, TE Mirador, TE Financial Consultants, or TE Investment Counsels, Inc. Visitors to this program are urged to use their own discernment to draw their own conclusions. Please read your prospectus and consult with your own investment advisor.